Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the comments that you made on the chat. And I am ready for the Q&A. I hope that my talk generated some insights. I also imagine that there will be some of the tough questions like, but how do I really do this in class? And I am ready to answer. But I would definitely love to hear your questions or comments or experiences, as we were saying at the beginning, regarding autonomy, so that we create here this a learning environment. So are there any questions in the QA?
Mayra, we can also ask with the reflective questions if you
Oh,
don't mind.
yes, that is true.
Just
Sorry, that is true. The reflective
that would
question.
be amazing because actually during your presentation you mentioned that an autonomous learner is a reflective learner, so we can
Mhm.
translate it to the situation we are in. So we can say that an autonomous webinar attendee is a reflective webinar attendee. So we can
Got it.
start with
Got
reflective.
it, got it, got it. So we've got the reflective questions, and we have the first one here as to how can teachers create an autonomous learning environment in the class? I wonder if anybody wants to answer this before I go to it. What do you think? So we had Gabby saying by teaching skills. By teaching learning skills, I think Gabby, you and I have talked about this, like teaching learning skills or teaching strategy. You know what? I think that skills, rather than being taught, I mean, they should be taught, but I think they should also be modeled. Like the students need to know how it looks like. And this is something that, as I was watching the video, I kind of wish I had included. We have to serve as good models of autonomy, no, so that we can show what it looks like and what is a good impact of it. And I don't mean beyond just being autonomous ourselves, but to show our students what autonomy looks like, what kind of activities foster autonomy. So I see a few comments in the Q&A box,
Yeah,
but I was
I
wondering.
also think it's very important for that because most of us we learn by example. So and it's very important to show our students an example, how to do things, explaining what we do and why we do that on a regular basis so that they understand how learning happens, as opposed to just requiring them to do this and that.
Mhm. Well, from this reflective question, I have Xuan Tao Dan asking a question. And I just, okay, I'm going to read it, see if I understand it. Does the communicative language teaching relevant to autonomy? It may seem kind of similar, but make the lesson and students more critical. Can you give more details? Mm, okay, I just want to make sure that I understand that question.
The person to clarify what
Yes, Sean. So can you just make sure that you clarify the that question? You can also do it by the chat or with your own voice. We'd be happy to do that.
yes,
So
if you wish, you can unmute yourself.
yeah, so that we can go clear with that question.
Uh,
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Um, I mean the communicative teaching, language teaching is quite similar, but the autonomy is more critical. But somehow how we can connect it together.
Okay. I think that what you are asking is communicative approach. Let me see if I'm understanding what you say when you mean communicative language teaching. I would call
Yes,
that communicative approach. In communicative approach, one of the basic aspects of communicative approach is that we go from controlled activities into freer activities. No, so I think that rather than thinking that they could be different, I think they are complementary. And as I would say, as I said earlier, autonomy is something that needs to be included now in whatever we do. So in communicative approach, when you begin with very controlled activities, Even though you may have a control aspect of the activity, there can still be some choice and there can still be some freedom, or at least an understanding of what we are doing and what is happening. No? Then
Yeah.
when the students go into freer activities are of course independent activities, but they can still have some guidance.
Oh.
So if you ask me how you will connect communicative approach to autonomy, well, you can still accompany the students in that process, and you can incorporate aspects of autonomy. Like even if you are in a controlled activity or in a free activity, students can still do research or program activities, or even in the control activities, they can search for some new language. I mean, there are many of these elements that can be incorporated, because what I mean to say is that autonomy can be there in your classroom regardless of the approach that you decide, of the communicative approach that you decide. Did that make
Yes.
any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense for me now. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's okay. I think we can move on, Mayra, to the second question
Okay.
in the reflective questions.
Okay, and then I'm going to go to some of the Q&As, because now we have so many questions floating
Okay.
around. The second was, what do you think should be the role of the teacher in learner autonomy? So, and I think that this connects to a question that Gabby is asking on the chat. I wonder what our students would say if we ask them how they understand learner independence. And I think this is where a teacher role becomes even more important, because I think that autonomy may be understood by students as, okay, you know what, I'm going to do what I want, I'm not going to do what I don't want. I have actually seen examples of this. Sometimes I give consultancy to universities or companies, and I actually got a call recently from a university in Latin America where the students decided that there was one subject they simply didn't like and they simply didn't want to take. So imagine a student calling you to say, you know what, I just don't want to take this subject. I just find it completely irrelevant in the curriculum. So I think we had a very strong case for autonomy here, where they might have misunderstood that this autonomy is kind of a selfish process, where if you think that something is not to your personal benefit, then it's irrelevant. This is why I try to make sure to mention in the talk that whatever whatever you do in an autonomous way will have an impact on your career and on what you do for others. Perhaps to answer Q2, we could ask what inhibits learner independence. Reverse thinking. See, I just got caught in my own game. Thank you, Gabi. Let's see. What inhibits learner independence? I would actually love everyone to answer this question. I don't want to just jump into it, so I will. However, what do you think of this question, guys? So that we continue to connect these ideas. What could possibly inhibit that independence? You can give us some keywords, or you can open your microphone. Anyone? What do you think, Heidi, may inhibit
For
learning?
instance, I'm just checking, nobody's raising their hands. Okay, so this is something I actually have experienced in my teaching career, to be honest. So there are students who are not very responsive to either the communicative way of learning or being autonomous, because they do not have a model presented for them. And it's very often what I notice, this students from non-Western countries, where the education system is slightly different from what we have in Europe, for example. And once I actually had an occasion when a student asked to be transferred to the upper intermediate class from the intermediate level. So it was his wish. And there, you give students more freedom. And instead of spoon feeding them, you are eliciting more and more, just, wanting to find out how much they know, where your role is to come in and build upon their existing knowledge. And there was a task, a listening task. And to set the scene, I showed the students images, and the task was simply to describe what they could see. And this particular boy got so upset, so angry, was actually mad at me by me daring to ask this question. And because he was not used to being asked, and said, I can't describe what's there because I do not know, we haven't done the listening yet, so how am I supposed to know the answer, and all these kind of things. And so he needed some time to adjust to our way of, I don't know, learning and teaching, because he was so not used to that. So this is one thing. So they do not have a model shown to them.
Listen, what you just told us is actually solid gold. Let me tell you why. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through this, but okay, so we have a student who perceives that he needs to be in another level because he wants, in a way, he's demanding more freedom and he's demanding more independence. Yeah. But what happens sometimes with students is like, I'm sorry that I make this analogy, but sometimes the whole concept of autonomy can be like a dog chasing a car. Yeah. I want that. I want that freedom. I want that freedom. I want to be free. I want to be self-managed. I want to be self-sufficient. I don't want to be told all the time what to do. And then, so like a dog, like a car, like a dog chasing a car. And what are you going to do once you actually catch up with the car? So, because freedom, this is the problem. Freedom takes a lot of responsibility, and sometimes people don't understand that. Yeah, sometimes students don't understand that the concept of being free is when you actually need the most responsibility and the most self-awareness. So we had a student who wanted that freedom, but when faced with it, he didn't know what to do with it. This is what it sounds like to me. So apart from just lack of having a good model of autonomy, I don't think he had a good sense of it, that when he was more autonomy, well, he had to actually be more autonomous. So it's a very easy thing to demand sometimes, but and I know that our students demand it, but then when they have it, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to go about it. And this is why I said that this process has to be always accompanied by the teacher, because there may be so many misunderstandings throughout the way, like this one that you just mentioned, no?
Exactly. And actually, this goes back, Mayra, to that Thomas Frank quote that you started your input session with. So you can be so free that you can choose bondage. Like, I'm not improving at all.
Exactly. So we want to be free, but what is that freedom going to be for? And it's also not an individualistic thing. Whatever, I know that I already said it, sorry that I repeat it, but honestly, whatever decision you make will have a greater impact either on your community or your future self, right? So we have, I don't know, I want to imagine the same student going to a job interview or actually being on the first day of a job. What is he going to do when that happens? When he's presented on a very similar challenge, is he going to say, no, wait a minute, I'm not ready for this? And this is why autonomy is an employability skill. Honestly, we have companies saying, okay, so we receive the students, they graduated school, they speak the language, they do, but when faced with this amount of freedom that where they have to express creativity, autonomy, then they don't know what to do with it. So this is why companies are telling schools, hey guys, soft skills, we need a lot of soft skills over here. And precisely because of this. So Gabi's saying, these are the skills I was referring to earlier. For students to be independent learners, they need to know how to be one. And in order to know how to be one, they need a good self-knowledge too, of what works for them, what doesn't work for them, how they can self-organize. And then there's a question here. Do you think overt teaching of learning strategies should be part of each lesson we teach? What kind of dedicated slot in the lesson? Whatever. English, well, languages have to do, the learning of a language has to do a lot with the input that the learner has, not with how much they see things happening. This is why when they travel to a foreign country, they pick the language quickly, not just because of the exposure that they have, but because they have sufficient models 24/7. So I think that everything should be modeled. And modeling doesn't take extra time. Modeling doesn't take extra planning. Modeling is just that before you have your students do it, you do it yourself. And you always speak in the first person. So rather than telling the students how to be autonomous, in a given activity, you can say, and this is how, guys, I am autonomous. This is how I do things, so that can suit my learning preferences and my learning objectives. So this is how I do it. You got to keep on the I language, so that they don't feel that this is you have to do this. No. Now, as of the course books, Gabi, you also asked this at the beginning. Some course books may inhibit students from being autonomous, but actually no. You know, I use course book a lot. I like course books. I use them, but I have trained my students to be able to make decisions on the course book. Sometimes I look at the course book and I say, let's look at the progression of these activities. How do you feel about them? And then they say, oh wait, no, this looks really difficult. Okay, so do you think we should start in a different place of the activity? Like the listening says, listen first and then decide. And the students say, no. How about first I decide and then I listen and I confirm. Okay, great. So we are continuously readapting the strategies that we see on the course book by understanding what the course book is asking for us. And even the activities that we skip, sometimes we decide that together, because I try to keep my students very aware of the process, and I always revise the process, and I always say, this is where we are, this is where we've gone so far. How have we done it? Let's look back. Well, this activity we did together, this activity you did on your own. So what was the impact of that? So I don't think course books are in any way something that should inhibit learning, but this is where you must apply creativity and adapting skills at its max. I mean, it's a course book, not a Bible. You can play around with it as much as you want and as much as you need. So at least for me, they are not really a constraint in terms of autonomy. On the contrary, they have helped me because I decide on what we're going to do with the students. I know that I need to go through my curricula if I work for a school or so, but we can go through all of the curricula and comply and even use it in a manner that we can all adapt to. And this is autonomy. Making that decision on how you're going to go about your materials, that's autonomy right there. And it's happening along with the teacher. What do you think of that? All good? Did that make any sense? Great.
Oh yes, Goblin's just answering. Makes sense. Getting students to reflect on the course book content. Yeah.
Of course. Where is this content going to take us? How does this connect to the previous unit? How does this connect to the future unit? What else do we need from another unit? So it's our book. We can transform it in any way we want, really. Okay, so clear now. Thank you, Sean. Should we go to our next question?
Yes, please.
And the third one was, which skills do students need to develop to become autonomous? Well, we kind of have already been tapping into all of the reflective questions, no? But before I go to giving an answer, what do you guys think? Does anybody want to open the microphone? I would like to hear a voice, especially with this very international audience. We are people from all over the planet. That is so enriching and interesting, guys. Yes, Maria Josepa Pujol. Go for it.
Hi, hello. I'm enjoying this this masterclass. Really having great enjoyment listening to you. What I think is necessary is the critical thinking is very important for students to encourage students' autonomy. I think so. And at the same time, I find that when you talk about inhibited students, I just have come across students that seem to be a little bit reluctant because there are social or religious aspects from their own background that makes them take a very kind of like setback position. Anyway, I mean, critical thinking, I think it's very, very important to help students to develop their autonomy, apart from, of course, having a clear framework of what's expected as well.
Sure. Now, let me ask you a question, or for everybody. What the thing is that critical thinking is a very common concept nowadays, and we need it in all our classes. But what would critical thinking sound like when it comes to autonomy? Critical thinking is usually the critical thinking of things that are outside of ourselves. No, like we read a certain content, and what did the author think? What is the opposite idea to that one? Critical thinking in most classes is something that happens to the outside. But I think that when it comes to autonomy, critical thinking should happen on the inside. It should go back to you. Like, how would I ask myself some critical questions? Why is this exercise complex for me? Why is this exercise easier than the other one? Why am I presenting a different resistance to? Why am I resisting this topic? Why is it that I resist doing things on my own? Or why is it that I might not be collaboration? So I think that that I might not be collaborating. So I think that what you said is very important. Yes, critical thinking has to be there. But when it comes to autonomy, I would just say that maybe it's something that we should redirect to critical self awareness, or critical thinking that will take us to a place of self awareness. That now the whole social and religious backgrounds. Yes, I mean this is something that I really enjoy about being gallery teachers. I teach in Latin America. You guys are in Asia. You guys are in Europe, and I think that the exchange of how this happens in different parts of the planet. Here in Mexico, more than religious reasons, education has always been very strict. Has always been shut up, listen, take it all in, give me a composition about it the next day. So this is something that we're facing. The fact that they are not, it's not that they're not willing to, they are just not accustomed. So this is why I tell my teachers, well, in that case, don't go to a class and say, hi guys, from now on, we're all gonna be very independent and very modern. No, no, no. You gotta ease your way into it, and little by little. Don't make a big plan for autonomy in one day. Start with one little thing. Make sure that this grows on your students, because we're getting accustomed to things. And yes, this is exactly how you would inhibit learner independence, by saying, okay, guys. Well, two things, Gabby. By saying, okay, listen, let's do as I say. That will definitely inhibit independence. But also going the other way around and coming to a class and say, hi, guys. From now on, we're all going to learn how to be independent, self-managed. We're going to learn self-management, and from now on, I expect. No, because you may actually scare some people who are afraid of this amount of autonomy and freedom, because also they may not feel that they are capable. And this is why a part of the talk was availability was one of my points. Make sure all the information is available. Make sure all the references are available. If you hand them all the tools, this may relax them into being more autonomous. Michael is saying an ability to consider that a question might have several different answers, not just my preferred one. There you go. Brilliant. Or not just the textbook one. No? There's also our own ideas. Wonderful. Michael just really got the heart of what we're saying. Not by accident this time, right? All right, Heidi. So where are we going next?
Okay, we still have one reflective question left, Mayra, if you would like to touch on that, and then we can move on to the Q&A.
Good. How do our students benefit from developing learning autonomy? I'm going to give a very clear answer to this one, very short. Because, like I said many times in the video, it is expected from them wherever they go after school, period. Because all companies, because all careers, because all technological developments, also all societal developments are really calling for autonomy. So this is something that is really going to go way beyond the classroom and also into their personal lives, whether they want to get married or have any other personal projects. So they benefit from having one of the most important skills for their professional lives right now.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's so important when students get stuck in their own ideas. Or for instance, you're preparing them for exams, and they think that that's, you know, that obviously that's the biggest goal in their lives, and but you need to, I don't know, open their eyes and show them that yes, you are preparing for an exam, but it's kind of in disguise, because you actually preparing for life. So that exam is just the door opener for you to get to university or to get your dream job. So it's not the end, the very end of anything. So it's really like, yeah, we learn so many soft skills by, you know, preparing for that exam, for instance. And so it's not only for the exam, you know, their communicative skills, writing skills, and all other things. Knowledge of grammar will be used, you know, in real life, and that will be much more important than that, you know, exam day.
And there are so many people taking exams out there. What's going to make you different, really? The exam? No. The exam, all the companies and all the jobs are used to having candidates that show up with their resume and their proficiency exam or whatever. That's it.
Yeah.
It's too
And yes,
simple. It's too basic.
yeah, and it's important. So it's very, very important, but it's just a stepping stone. So
Mm-hmm.
to other things
Mm-hmm.
in our lives.
Mm-hmm. I guess autonomy will also mean dealing with failure and errors. Yes, one of the most important things. Thank you, Gabby. This is why I said an autonomous learner is self-aware and critical when thinking about themselves. For example, I have taught my students the difference between an error and a mistake, and they love that. They love that because then I say, "What was that? A mistake or an error?" Well, teacher, I think it was a mistake because, or it was an error because I already know this, but I didn't realize that that the context is different. Ah, okay, cool. So now they know that mistakes are not just wrong, things you did wrong. No, there are errors, there are mistakes, there are sometimes they happen for a lack of attention, sometimes they happen for a lack of knowledge, sometimes it's because, I mean, whatever reason it is. But I have actually had this open discussion with my students. Let's understand the difference between an error and a mistake, and why we make them, and how we can benefit from them. And they have actually grown more confident about just making mistakes or error because they're more critical about it, basically. So, are we ready for the Q&A?
Yes, and I can see a question from Corinna. Corinna, would you like to ask your question? If you wish, you can. Oh yes, unmute yourself, please.
Sure. So my question is, to what age group would you start to work in the learner autonomy concepts? Like, how would you implement it for younger learners? And what elements would you use or leave out, if any?
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Karina. That was an amazing question. Okay. Well, when it comes to very young learners, modeling and demonstrating is even far more important that you would do it with adults, as usually young learners learn more from what you do rather than from what you say. Uh, and actually, what you do or what you say has to be accompanied with what you do. Now, the strategies for autonomy for young learners, I think I would definitely go into modeling, the speaking in the first person, and showing, if you have children, for example, look, children, this is I don't know. I am going to draw. I'm going to take my chair and I'm going to take my book and I'm going to draw my, I don't know, giraffe, whatever it is that the children may be doing. And look, I'm going to draw my giraffe. So I'm going to actually sit down and I'm going to concentrate. Look, this is what concentration looks like. Yeah, when you're sitting down, paying attention. Uh, this is what critical thinking may sound like. Oh, did I use all my colors? Yes, I did. Good for me. With kids, I don't think there's much to explain about it. It's more doing and showing. Children will naturally imitate and copy whatever you do. So the difference would be that with older learners, there's more negotiation. But if you're going to negotiate concepts like autonomy with young learners, no, their minds may interpret anything they want. So I wouldn't go into those negotiations with them. I was just going to modeling, and they're more modeling. This is how I do it. And always very important with children because they learn through senses. Always say, this is what independence looks like. This is what it sounds like. And this is what it feels like. After I do my drawing, how do I feel? Oh my God, I did such a beautiful drawing. I feel very good because it was independent. I was independent. So you show them the good feelings behind the things that you do because they tend to have a more emotional connection to things. But you need to definitely show them. Remember how things look like, how they sound like, and how they feel like you in the first person. And just through that modeling, you can do a lot with children. I don't know if that was a good answer for your question.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you.
You're welcome, Karina.
You can even incorporate the self-assessment part, just asking them, how do you think you did? Or, knowing your student, you can ask, each other what they think about each other's.
Or the happy face system, the happy face system. Like today I worked, I worked confidently. Today I read the word on my own. A simple sentence like that. Today I read the word on my own. Happy face, sad face, or serious face. And then this type of assessment is going to help you understand how the students are progressing with it. So yes, thank you, Heidi. Assessment is key. Very good.
Okay. We also have a question from Maria. Maria, would you like to voice your question?
Hi, Maria.
Yes.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon again. My question was that, because anyway, probably from my own experience, that working on projects, fosters independence in the students. Of course, probably this is obvious. Of course, what kind of framework do you think it's necessary to really make sure that this that the fostering is just achieves better results? Of course, I think we've been talking now about lots of elements which are necessary, but anyway, could you perhaps incorporate a few more, or just that is something which hasn't been said? Or so what's your opinion on to encourage this independence in younger students, of course?
Okay. Well, is that your question? To encourage independence on younger learners?
Yes.
Okay. Very similar to the answer that I gave earlier. A lot through example, and a lot through them seeing how you do things. But I would definitely incorporate just to give you a more tangible response. With young learners, something that has been proven very effective, and I know this because I work with publishers and we include this on the textbooks, are rubrics based on the can-do statements. For example, I can read a word on my own. How good do you feel about that? So when the students begin to get a sense of what they can do on their own, they get more motivated to be more independent. Especially young children want to naturally be independent more than anyone else. This is why when they are 3 years old and you call them babies, they get mad at you. They're like, "What? I'm not a baby. I can do this." Because they want to have that feeling all the time. So a very good tool that I use with my young learners are the I can do statements. From if your textbook, some textbooks naturally give you the can do statements, but no, you can transform any objective into a can do statements. Tell me all the things that you can do on your own. I can tie my own shoelaces. Okay, there's one thing. I can get dressed on my own, and I can look up a word in a dictionary on my own. Make sure that you always show a lot of evidence, which was also part of my video presentation. Show them evidence of the things that they can do. This will definitely foster a very good sense of autonomy and independence in students because they want to. They naturally want to feel capable that they want to do it naturally.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Do you think that for teenagers, say 14, 15, 16 years old, there are different strategies that we could address?
With the yes, but with a little. I would definitely incorporate the modeling. I would definitely incorporate the can-do statements. But adolescents are far more complex for two reasons. Well, we know that they are in a continuous emotional, hormonal turmoil, and this is something that we need to understand. But I think that with teenagers, I would be more on the side of persuasive speaking, as I was saying earlier. And I would definitely have that autonomy more connected to social responsibility because they respond a lot to that. So if you are talking about any common topic in the class, if you are able to make that connection as to how they may have an impact on others' life, this actually works very well with teenagers. Just like children have this natural sense of independence, teenagers have a natural. Listen, when we are at that age, we all want to save the world. We are highly idealistic as teenagers. We are highly philosophical, and I think that it's hard for some of us to tap into that natural talent that adolescents have because we're normally focused on the negative, as they can be very negative and as they can be very reactive to things. But in my experience, what has worked with them is to say, okay, we're going to do this type of project. You were talking about projects. How if we took this down to the real world, where would we put it? If you open a class saying, guys, what are the issues of the world that concern us? They will immediately participate. I don't know if this has happened to anyone, but when you face the students to these realities, they are highly more participative and they get a sense of, I need to do something by myself, you know? So this is the only twist that I would give specifically for adolescents. Did I answer your question?
Thank you ever so much. Thanks, brilliant.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, and I have one more question, Mayra. Let's say we can talk about, because Maria was talking about, oops, her question disappeared. So let me just phrase it in another way. So what Maria was talking about, I think, is linked to collaborative learning and collaborative teaching as well. So where the students, have their own personal responsibility, but also their own responsibility as a group. And you keep mentioning the importance of, the responsibility of the individual on their surroundings, on people around us, and on the world around us. So how does it translate into the classroom?
Sometimes with the simplest of questions. How is my performance or my autonomous collaboration having an impact on the group? What is it that a potential behavior may have an impact on the class? The easiest way of incorporating this is through final reflections where they can observe the impact of things. And if you don't necessarily ask a question, I think that a class can be wrapped up just by saying, look, guys, today or yesterday, today we all came to class having seen the video, and that actually saved us 5 minutes. And then we use those 5 minutes in this other different activity. So, wow, that was wonderful. So even if they don't know it or realize it, just the fact that you point out at how that had a positive impact, not the negative impact, if necessary, rather than saying, oh, because nobody watched the video, we lost 10 minutes. No. In that case, I guess I would go like, okay, so we didn't watch the video. And so what happened? How did the class progress differently to the time when we actually did watch the video? So how they engage in the reflections of the impact of how autonomy has on collaboration and the ultimate classroom goals is going to be very important. And this is actually why it's also important to have classroom goals or learning goals that are relevant to everybody, because then there won't be any connection. No, they need to have a connection between the common objectives that we all have and how we are really acting on a very personal manner, especially now that we're at home, right? for things to happen.
Thank you so much, Mayra. Do you have any final words of wisdom?
Yes, I don't know how we're going with time, but my final words of wisdom is Gabby asked a brilliant question, which was how take your mind back to the past when you were a learner. Were you autonomous and independent? She said that I was almost certainly not independent enough and I didn't know how to be independent. Well, this is a very important consideration because we, us wiser people, have different experiences. We did not grow up in a time where autonomy was fostered or needed. On the contrary, then I said the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, where I went to I spent most of my time in school. This was only for the gifted, the special, but not the rest of us. So we don't come from there. So how are we going to teach something we never learned in the first place? And I know that this is why, as teachers, we may have all these questions. And what I want to tell you for that is, it doesn't matter whether you learn it or not. Just reset your mind into thinking, I actually don't know how to be an autonomous learner, let alone teach others how to. So, okay, then you press the reset button and you say, then I will teach myself something about autonomy. And then I will know exactly how to transfer that knowledge to my students, because everything begins with oneself. And this is where you can actually transfer that. Now, projects definitely foster autonomy, but make sure that, listen, the last thing I want to say is autonomy is not something that you need to overdo or plan for. Just make sure that you have the right questions for it. Just make sure that you have the right reflections about it, and make sure that you have the right examples and the right models. That's it. You don't need to go read tons of literature on it. You don't need to prepare a special lesson plan. Be reflective upon it all the time and show the evidence of our independent behavior and the impact that it has in our classroom.